Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of my Dorney Park recreation. In the last episode, we finished up the park, pretty much. Got all the builds done for inside and outside the park. We are not quite done yet. As I mentioned last episode, there are a lot of little tweaks and builds I need to finish. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. I've got a really long list of things I want to do. I've been accumulating over the last few months, based on things I've noticed and comments people have made on YouTube. I also sent the park to a couple of friends to get some feedback directly, and I've gotten a lot of really great feedback of things I could improve, little mistakes I made, things like that. And I think now would be a good opportunity to go through and clean a lot of that stuff up. I picked a couple things I think would make a particularly good episode, so we're going to go through the park and make some changes. Nothing too major, but little changes like this I think will help make the park feel a little bit more complete and look a little bit nicer overall. I think the first thing I want to start with today is the carousel. And while I mentioned I do really like the carousel design that we have here, I do want to make a little tweak. There is a cool trick that was discovered by user AStrayLife recently to simulate the horses actually moving up and down, which I think is very cool. They have a YouTube channel called OpenRCT2 Tutorials. They might have a video on this posted there. If so, there will be a link to it in this video's description if you want to learn a little bit more about how this is done. Now, my merry-go-round is pretty short, so I'm not sure if the effect is going to be very noticeable, but I think I wanted to try it out anyway and see how it goes. Alrighty, I think I have it working, although it's a very, very subtle effect even after I raise the roof a unit. You might be able to see the cars on the merry-go-round going up and down ever so slightly as they go around the layout here. I'm not sure if that was actually worth doing, but it was fun to learn how to do it, I guess. It might be more noticeable on a much larger ride, but on a 4x4 like this with a roof on it, it's pretty hard to tell what's going on. Anyway, just one of the things I wanted to get checked off the list. Seems like it worked out okay. Fun little technique to have sticking around in case I want to use it again in the future. Next thing I'd like to work on is the foliage in the park. Now, if you've been watching this far, you probably know I love spamming trees everywhere. Everyone loves a good tree. They can make any part of your park look nice and beautiful. But there are definitely some places where I might have gone a little bit overboard on some of the trees. And there are definitely some places where they are blocking line of sight, or they kind of overwhelm the buildings and rides around them. I do want to have a lot of greenery in the park, but I do want to see if I can maybe take some of those trees down, replace them with some bushes, some gardens. I think that might help make things look a little bit more reasonable, a little bit more realistic, while also still having a good amount of trees. All right, I think that'll do for our cleanup of the foliage around the park. As you can see, I lowered a lot of the trees that were inside the park area, deleted a lot of them as well. Sad to see some of them go. Do love me a good tree, but they were kind of overwhelming the rides, and now you can actually see the rides a little bit better, I guess. You can see the pathing a little bit better. And there are also some glitchy areas that definitely didn't look particularly good with trying to make planters out of like Virginia Rail Track. A little bit glitchy if you let peeps walk over those. Not really worth having them in there if it's going to look like that. I think the park looks green enough as it is with maybe just a little bit less foliage, but I think it still looks good enough. All right, the next thing I'd like to work on is Talon over here. A couple notes I have on Talon, some things I'd like to clean up, some things I'd like to tweak. One thing I did mention back when we did the original Talon episode is that we really needed some diagonal breaks for the brake run here. And we didn't have them yet, but now we do. So I think the first thing I want to do is add in some real diagonal breaks in here, get those block breaks corrected. And there's also just some general cleanup work I want to do. One note I have is that maybe it's a bit too tall, so it's going through the layout a little bit too fast. So I want to see if I can maybe make the first drop here a little bit shorter and tweak the supports a little bit. We still haven't supported the loop yet, and finish up the fencing over here that I forgot to do. So just a bunch of little things, but hopefully it'll make Talon look a little bit nicer, perform a little bit better. So let's see what we can do. Okay, I think this is going to do for our Talon tweaks for now. Some subtle changes, but I think it does help make the coaster run a little bit smoother. So I did lower the hill by a little bit, and I raised the loop a little bit as well because I felt like it was going through it a bit too fast, but all the other elements seem to take pretty well. So hopefully it makes for overall a better experience. I did notice that also, not that this matters, but the slower speed does mean that it does get naturally a sub 10 intensity, so the corkscrew here no longer an issue, so I don't have to hack the ride calculations to get peeps on it, which is always nice. Next thing I like to deal with is the splash boats over here at Whitewater Landing. Definitely could use a little bit of love as far as some of the decorations and pathing over here go. I think when I first built it, I based a lot of it on what was visible on Google Maps and not the photos. So it doesn't look very much like it's supposed to. It's supposed to be brown, and a lot of this is supposed to be enclosed, similar to how I did my Cedar Point version. I don't know why I didn't make the connection here and do this one similarly. It could also use a little bit more detailing here on the ground a little bit, and I would like to reroute this exit path here and fix whatever peep trap is going on. So again, a bunch of little things. Hopefully it will help make this area look a little bit nicer and operate a little bit better. Alright, as you can probably notice, I'm again struggling with this one a little bit, trying to decide whether to make it gray or make it brown, because in real life, it's not really either. It's sort of a very, very dull, desaturated brown, which isn't really represented well either way. I guess brown looks a little bit nicer in general than gray as far as RCT goes, so probably just going to stick with that here. But making these curved platforms up here is not very easy to do, especially to get it to look reasonable with the supports and everything. I don't know why this one's being so glitchy. Probably have to figure out how to rearrange these steel blocks a bit better. Anyway, I rerouted the exit platform to be a bit closer to the midway, so guests aren't walking way out of the way to get off the ride, like they do in real life. One unfortunate side effect of this is that they're no longer walking over the splash zone, but with the way this ride's laid out, I don't think there's really much we can do about it. And they were already pretty much at the end of the splash zone anyway, so it's not like they're missing out on a whole lot. Anyway, that's about all I wanted to do to clean up Whitewater Landing for now. Alright, so the next thing I'd like to look at today is the water park. When we built this a couple episodes ago, I kind of rushed through things a little bit, and the end result was maybe a little bit sloppy, a little bit under-detailed. So I feel like it could use a little bit extra attention in here to add some more details where they're missing, clean up some edges, things like that. Give it some of that detail that it should have gotten the first time around. I was a little bit impatient trying to get this thing done, and it deserves better, so let's spend a little bit of time going through. I want to add some more flower beds and picnic areas, I think, to some of these areas, especially this big empty flat area right here. Clean up some of the trees like we did with the main park earlier. Maybe see if we can get some of these slides looking a little bit nicer. Things like that. I got a checklist of a couple different things I want to tackle. Hopefully we can get this thing looking a little bit more reasonable.
All right, I'm going to take a little break for now. That was a pretty long session tweaking the water park here. Just to recap what I've done though, added a bunch of benches and lamps and things to the area, expanded a couple flower beds as I mentioned. Still a couple more things I could be doing to flesh out this area a little bit. I think I want to tweak some of the lamps. I kind of placed some haphazardly. Might place those a little bit more carefully later. Big changes you probably noticed. Tweaking a lot of the slides in this area. Got several of them open. About half the slides are now functional. The racing slides here actually work. Speed slides back here. And these gray ones up here near the front. Got those all running. We don't have the water slide mode yet, as I mentioned last time we built these and talked about this. So it's just regular continuous circuit mode with some hidden chain to get the dinghy slides back to the stations, but it's a tried and true method, still works pretty well. Even if it looks a little bit silly to see the dinghies floating in midair, most of the time they're hidden pretty well, so you don't even really notice it. So nice to get some more peeps back here. It helps make this area look a little bit more lively with the rides going and more peeps walking around, things like that. Starting to get our guest count back up a little bit, which is nice. Still a little bit I want to do in this area, but I'm going to take a little break for now, and I think we'll come back to add some more finishing touches in the next session that I do. Alrighty, I think that's about all I wanted to get done as far as really major changes to the water park over here. And this is starting to be a little bit of a longer episode than I thought it was going to be, which isn't a bad thing, but we do have to finish at some point. I do want to spend a little bit more time on some detailing though, just to add a little bit more life into this area. And one thing that this area and parts of the main park could also use to break up some of the larger path areas, some of the larger empty spaces, I wanted to add in some little shops and stalls, little carts here and there to represent places where peeps could buy, you know, food or ice cream or little souvenirs, things like that. Just a nice little way to fill in some of the cracks. So I think we're going to build ourselves a ride with the retro monorail cars, I believe, and place some of those around the map and see what it looks like. Alrighty, we still have more to do. Next thing I wanted to work on is actually this section over here. In the last episode, I think I complained about this staff parking lot over here and how I started working on building it, but it turned out to be kind of ugly and I didn't like it very much, so I wound up black tiling the whole thing. It's been suggested to me that I put it back in, if only to keep Steel Force from being so close to the edge of the map and fill in this kind of blank spot over here. So I think I am going to try to put that parking lot back in. I think I'm going to do a slightly more minimal version of the original design though. Keep it a little bit less detailed compared to the park, make it a little bit less distracting, hopefully. Still going to add some cars and stuff in there, but hopefully we can get a design that makes a little bit more sense visually. Alrighty, like I said, kind of a simpler design for this parking lot than we originally had in mind. Threw in a couple cars in here, didn't want to add too many because, again, the line of sight through Steel Force is a little bit cluttered, a little bit distracting. Not a huge fan of the way this looks, but, you know, it's a recreation. And if we want to have this parking lot here, it's going to be visible through the coaster, and that's just how it's going to be. On the other hand, it does look a little bit nicer to have this chunk of lane in here, rather than having a portion that was very obviously just kind of scooped out because I didn't want to put it in there. So hopefully this makes the perimeter of the park look a little bit more natural. And like I said, keep Steel Force away from the edge, so you don't want to have your coasters right up on the edge of the park. Alright, I think one last thing I want to do for this episode, I'd like to clean up the ground a little bit, and by that I mean the black tiled area here. A lot of times when I see parks that are not rectangular and they have black tiling around the edge, you get this big cliff on the side where the park ends. I usually do this in my own parks, but lately I've been finding it kind of distracting, and I've seen some people pull the black tiling up almost to the surface, and I think it looks pretty good usually when I see people do it. So I think I want to try that around the edges of the park and see if that helps things look a little bit nicer so we don't have this weird big cliff here. And it will also cover up where my guest spawn points are. So let's give that a try and see what that looks like. All right, finished pulling up the black tiling to hide the edges a little bit. I think it does help things look a little bit nicer, especially when you pan out here. You're really focused on just the park itself and not the weird edging. A little bit of glitching artifacts on some of this. I don't know if it's easy for you to see in the video, but I think it's because of the textures of the walls being different, and it has some visual artifacts. I don't know if it's something I can clean up very easily just by painting the walls void texture or not, but I'll have to play around with that a little bit. Other than that though, I think this is about where I want to leave today's episode. Again, sorry, this one is pretty long. A lot of little cleanup things I wanted to do today. There's still some more stuff I do want to do. I'm going to do some more off-camera work, tweaking some things, finding out if there's any other cleanup stuff I have to do. Currently, there's also an issue with guests getting lost I have to deal with. If you've noticed, the park rating is dropped because people keep getting stuck here around the wave swinger for some reason. Don't know what's up with that. Although the fact that it's taken this long for us to have like some major pathfinding issues is pretty good. So overall, I think our peep pathfinding has been pretty decent. It's gotten pretty crowded over here too because of our new fake exit over here by Steel Force. So hopefully that's not an issue over here. I see a lot of peeps in this little corridor right here. Hope they're not getting stuck either. Anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. I think this is where we're going to leave our final regular build episode. Next thing you'll see from me will be some on-rides and the final tour of the whole park. So look forward to that coming up here soon. But I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.